Let's talk about toxic guilt and how it can be a control tactic in relationships. Want to catch up to speed? Here's the short that sparked this discussion. And here's the question that we are going to dig into. So, this is a really rich question because there are several layers happening at the same time, and I'd be really careful about reducing it to they're trying to control me. So, for everyone listening, this is a general educational discussion and it is not individualized counseling advice. But what stands out to me first is that once a relationship of any type, not just parent-child, has moved into insults, personal criticisms, character attacks, and contempt for at least one person or maybe even both, these people are operating outside of their window of tolerance. So that is important because relationship repair requires capacity. And if you are out of your window of tolerance, you do not have capacity for repair. What does it mean to be out of your window of tolerance? You're not able to really think clearly. You're not able to really be present and hear and take in what the other person is saying. You are likely going to start feeling that criticism and defenses go up, and the chance of repair pretty much disappears right there. So before we even ask, is this control or is this toxic guilt? We might need to be asking, do either people in this situation currently have capacity for repair? Those are two very different situations. Now, another important distinction here that I want to bring up is an insult is not automatically a guilt trip. So sometimes insults are malicious. Sometimes insults are absolutely meant to be wounding, and sometimes they are attempts to gain sort of the upper hand or power in a relationship. But sometimes insults are also the language of unresolved hurt. So that doesn't make them acceptable and it doesn't make them healthy. This is not healthy communication. But let's dig a little bit deeper into this. There is a difference between someone saying something hurtful because they want to dominate you or they want to gain power in the relationship or they maybe do want to guilt trip you. But there's a difference from that and someone who is saying something hurtful because they feel unseen, unheard, misunderstood, or emotionally abandoned or rejected. The motivation underneath these is what we really want to get at, and this is what makes them different. So even when children become adults, they do not stop carrying, we do not stop carrying our childhood experiences. The relationship changes legally and it changes in dynamics and some roles potentially, but it doesn't necessarily change emotionally. Adult children often show up carrying memories, interpretations, wounds, disappointments, and unmet needs from earlier stages of life. This is just a generalized sort of statement for all people. Now, sometimes those experiences are accurate reflections of what happened, and sometimes they are misunderstandings. Oftentimes, it's a mixture of both. So human memory can be complicated, and we sort of have a bias to really remember some of the negative standout things. That is just a human cognitive fallacy, if you will. This is where maturity, emotional maturity, is required on both sides. Both sides. This is not picking on any one person. Human maturity for both sides asks a ton of each person in different ways. So for the parent, one of the hardest developmental tasks is allowing your child to grow up and become an independent adult who may eventually, one day, come to you and say, something about my experience with you was hurtful. And that is incredibly difficult to have as feedback because most parents are trying and most parents love their children and most parents sacrificed and made hard choices. Yet, despite all these good intentions, children can still feel hurt, can feel misunderstood, or feel like the relationship had some moments of misalignment. A sign of maturity in the parent is the ability to temporarily step out of the parental role and become another adult across from the other adult and just receive the feedback. Another sign of maturity here is to have an understanding that you can separate your worth and your value from your role as parent. Just because your child has expressed hurt does not automatically mean that you are terrible and you have no worth or value as a parent. The hard ask of maturity here is to not immediately defend, to not immediately jump into explaining yourself and to not immediately correct the narrative and how, they shouldn't feel hurt or your actions were justified or whatever the case may be. The part of maturity here is to become curious about the lived experience that they are sharing. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with every interpretation that they have. It means you are willing to at least hear it and acknowledge that they are there and they wanted to take the chance to share that with you. Now, on the other side, maturity is required from the adult child as well. One of the hard developmental tasks of adulthood for all of us, whether you become a parent or not, is beginning to separate my parent from the human being who was and is my parent. Those are not the exact same thing. What I mean here is oftentimes children idealize the parental role and have this almost unconscious set of expectations. And life just so has it that majority of us parents miss the mark here and there, regardless of our intent. So parents are people, and people have had their own childhoods and their own limitations and their own wounds, and people have their own mistakes and lessons hard earned. People who were parenting with tools they themselves never received. So maturity for the adult child means gradually learning to see both realities at the same time, the role of parent and the role of the person who is their parent. This is a sign of emotional maturity where you can hold complexity and duality at the same time. What does that mean? You can understand that, yes, my experience matters and this is how I feel from it. And my parent is another human being, not a perfect role. The challenge is that when either side can only see their reality, repair becomes really difficult and it becomes a war on whose reality is more right or more justified or who had it harder. Both people are going to lose when this dynamic gets into play. So now let's address the question of control and toxic guilt. There's a few questions I want to offer to be curious and to bring in some self-reflection where you can take this information and discern what is most true for you. So here's the questions. What pain has not yet been acknowledged? Not agreed with, acknowledged. And equally important, is this relational dynamic moving towards mutual understanding, accountability, and repair? Or has one person become so invested in maintaining the grievance in a way that is blocking growth of the relationship altogether? So here's the last little bit I'll leave you with. Often, underneath anger, there's hurt, and underneath criticism, there is often disappointment, and underneath contempt, there is likely some hidden grief. And underneath many family conflicts, there is a longing that sounds something like, please understand what this felt like for me. That is true of a parent, of a child, of any person. Healthy repair requires that both people eventually become more interested in understanding than winning over their version of reality as the most true or the most correct or the most justified. All parties need to be more interested in growth than that justification. That is a lot of emotional maturity right there, and it is hard for most of us to do. People need to be more interested in resolution than rightness. Relationships are going to heal through understanding, accountability, emotional safety, and a shared willingness to move towards one another so that together you can both move forward. It is not simply a repeated expression of pain that is going to heal that relationship. I'm Chrissy, the emotional intelligence nurse. If you found this helpful, that's so wonderful. I'm so thankful that you tuned in today, and I will see you around.